Bookframe presents On Power by Mark R. Levin. In a world that changes faster than we can grasp, one constant remains: the pursuit of power. But what happens when power becomes unmoored from principle? When the institutions meant to safeguard liberty instead become instruments of control? This is the central question posed by Mark R. Levin in his provocative and penetrating book, On Power, a sweeping historical, political, and philosophical examination of how centralized power corrupts, consumes, and ultimately dismantles freedom. Levin, a constitutional scholar, legal expert, and best-selling author, opens the book with a sense of urgency. He warns that America is approaching a precipice, that the balance of power, so carefully constructed by the Founding Fathers, is tipping dangerously toward tyranny. Not the tyranny of kings and swords, but the soft tyranny of bureaucracy, ideology, and political manipulation. In On Power, Levin charts a clear path from the founding principles of limited government to the modern-day expansion of federal authority, exposing along the way how executive overreach, judicial activism, and legislative complacency have eroded the very fabric of the Constitution. The story begins in Philadelphia, 1787. The founders, men like Madison, Jefferson, and Hamilton, designed a republic based on the separation of powers: three co-equal branches, checks and balances, and a Bill of Rights to guard against tyranny. But from the earliest days, that balance was under pressure. Levin takes us through the 19th and early 20th centuries, tracing the gradual rise of federal power. He highlights pivotal moments: the Civil War and Lincoln's use of executive authority, the Progressive era's demand for central planning, FDR's New Deal which exploded the size of government, and LBJ's Great Society which entrenched entitlement and dependency into law. Each step, Levin argues, brought America closer to what the founders feared most: a government too large, too intrusive, and too insulated from the people. But the heart of On Power isn't just historical analysis. It's a devastating critique of the modern administrative state, the unelected agencies, regulators, and czars who wield immense authority without direct accountability. The EPA, the IRS, the Department of Education. These are not just bureaucracies. Levin calls them fourth-branch entities, institutions that create rules, enforce them, and punish violators, all outside the purview of Congress or the courts. He explores how this power manifests in everyday life. Farmers fined for water puddles, religious organizations forced to compromise beliefs, parents losing control over what their children learn, citizens surveilled, censored, and silenced, all in the name of progress, fairness, or safety. And then comes the media. In Levin's view, the press, once the watchdog of government, has become its lapdog. Rather than challenge authority, it reinforces the ruling ideology. It manipulates narratives, suppresses dissent, and labels critics as extremists. Truth, in this new regime, becomes relative. Language becomes a weapon, and history, a tool to be rewritten. Levin is especially concerned about the rise of what he calls post-constitutional progressivism, an ideology that sees the Constitution not as a fixed document to be preserved, but as a living instrument to be shaped and bent to political will. Under this doctrine, rights are not inherent. They are granted. Liberty is not protected. It is regulated. And citizenship is not empowerment. It is compliance. Through this lens, On Power becomes more than a critique. It is a call to arms. Levin urges readers to return to first principles, to rediscover the writings of Locke, Montesquieu, and the Federalist Papers. He argues that only through constitutional literacy, civic engagement, and moral courage can the tide be reversed. He reminds us that tyranny doesn't always arrive with drums and chains. Sometimes it comes with paperwork, with regulations, with smiling politicians and empty promises. On Power culminates in a vision of restoration. Levin believes it is not too late to reclaim the republic, but the window is closing. He proposes real solutions: sunset laws for federal agencies, term limits for Congress, restoration of state sovereignty, protection of free speech, religious liberty, and property rights. He emphasizes the power of the individual, the citizen who educates, organizes, votes, and refuses to yield. Because, as he reminds us, the greatest threat to tyranny is an informed and courageous people. In the final pages, Levin reflects on legacy, not just his own, but that of the nation. What will future generations inherit? A government that serves the people or rules over them? A constitution that lives in practice or only in parchment? With On Power, Mark R. Levin delivers a sobering warning and an inspiring challenge. He asks us not only to see what is wrong, but to fight for what is right, because power, once taken, is rarely returned, and freedom, once lost, is hard to reclaim. For viewers of Book Frame, this is more than a political commentary. It is a battle cry, a reminder that liberty demands vigilance, that the true revolution is not in violence, but in knowledge, conscience, and courage.